My daughter-in-law pushed me overboard from a private yacht to claim my $50 million. But when they walked back through the front door, they found me waiting, with a delicious surprise of my own. Stay tuned to see how everything unfolded. And please don't forget to support our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing with friends and family. Your encouragement means everything to us. Now let's dive into the story. Say hello to the sharks, my daughter-in-law hissed as she pressed against me, sending me tumbling backward off the boat's railing. My son Marcus didn't even try to stop her. He just stood there smirking, as if he'd been waiting for this very moment. What was disguised as a celebratory cruise turned out to be a carefully laid trap to get rid of me and seize my $50 million fortune. They believed tossing me into the sea would be the end of my story. But later that night, when they returned home thinking they'd succeeded, I was sitting calmly in my chair with a very different ending in store. But let's rewind. It began on a sunny Tuesday in Savannah, Georgia. I was 67, just recovering from hip surgery, and holding on to the hope that my son still loved me. That morning Marcus called me himself. No assistant, no voicemail. His voice sounded warm, almost tender, as he invited me on a private boat trip. Just the three of us, he said. We want to celebrate your recovery, Mama, like family should. Foolishly, I let myself believe him. Since my husband Charles had died 2 years earlier, leaving me control of his real estate empire, everything had shifted. Conversations with Marcus always seemed to circle back to money, and his visits had grown short and distant. Still, I wanted to believe family ties meant something. So I dressed carefully that morning, navy dress, pearls, the set Charles always said made my eyes shine like a storm. With that fragile hope, I took a cab to the marina. Marcus greeted me with a hug that felt more like a handshake. Behind him, Kendra leaned casually against the rail, her smile sharp and cold. The yacht itself gleamed against the sun. Far too new and too expensive for two people who constantly claimed they were struggling. She's a beauty, isn't she? Marcus bragged, sweeping his hand toward the vessel. 40 feet of pure luxury. We're even thinking of the Bahamas next month. What he didn't mention was that this yacht had been bought with the $3 million I'd given him last year to build his so-called consulting firm. Money I had long suspected never touched a business account. At first, the cruise was pleasant enough. Calm waves, champagne flowing too freely, Kendra's syrup-sweet chatter about the renovations to the house that used to be mine. The one I signed over in hopes of keeping family close. But soon Marcus's questions began. Soft at first, then pressing harder. Mama, have you thought about updating your will? You know, making things simpler so probate won't be a hassle. Meanwhile, Kendra pretended to take selfies, but her camera always seemed to catch me sipping my drink, her lens lingering whenever Marcus brought up finances. They were collecting evidence, staging a picture of me as confused, unstable, and dependent. Suddenly, it all clicked. The papers they'd slid in front of me while I was recovering, the power of attorney documents, the ignored calls to my financial advisor. Marcus, I said firmly, putting my glass down. Take me back to shore. That's when the pretense fell away. I'm afraid that won't be happening, Mama, he said, voice flat and cold. You've been slipping, Kendra added smoothly, stepping closer. The doctors agree, early dementia. And we've documented everything. I gave a bitter laugh, even as their scheme closed in on me. I was sharper than both of them combined, but we were surrounded by endless water. No witnesses. Just me, my son, and the woman he'd chosen over blood. Marcus pulled out documents, asset transfers for my protection. His eyes dared me to fight. And if I don't sign? I asked, my voice steady though my heart hammered. That's when Kendra leaned in, smiling for the first time. Accidents happen, especially to women your age. One slip, one fall, the ocean takes you. And everyone believes a widow recovering from surgery just lost her balance. And with that, she shoved me. The Atlantic swallowed me whole. The water hit like knives, dragging me down. My hip screamed, my dress pulled me under. Above me, Marcus cried out theatrically, Mama, while Kendra whispered into her phone, already arranging the cover story. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. The sea wrapped around me like a grave, my lungs burning as panic clawed at my chest. But Charles and I had swum laps every morning for 20 years. My body knew how to survive. I kicked off my heels, fought upward, and burst through the surface, just in time to see the yacht speeding away, my son and his wife abandoning me to die. But fate wasn't done with me. A battered fishing boat cut across the waves. A man's voice rang out. "Hold on, ma'am." Calloused hands dragged me aboard. I collapsed on the deck, coughing up seawater. "Name's Jeremiah," the fisherman said, his face weathered by years in the sun. "This here's my grandson, Deshaun. Lord have mercy. What kind of monsters throw a woman into the sea?" "The kind who stand to inherit $50 million, I rasped. Jeremiah's expression hardened. He wrapped me in a rough blanket that smelled of diesel and salt. "You're safe now. Do you want me to call the Coast Guard?" I clutched his arm, desperate. "Not yet. If they know I survived, they'll come after me again. I need time." He studied me, then nodded slowly. Sometimes the right thing ain't following the rules. He radioed a false report, just debris in the water, then steered us to a quiet private dock hidden in a cove. That evening, Jeremiah introduced me to Miss Thelma, a 70-year-old widow who ran a small, off-the-books bed and breakfast. She didn't ask questions when I stumbled in drenched and trembling. She simply ladled out hot chicken soup and said, "Baby, long as you're not bringing trouble to my door, you're welcome here." So while Marcus and Kendra filed a police report about their missing mother, I sat at Miss Thelma's kitchen table with Jeremiah and Deshaun, planning my next move. They thought I was dead. That gave me power. The next morning, I searched the internet on Thelma's old computer. And there it was, headlines announcing my death. The widow of Charles Whitaker, prominent businessman, lost at sea. Articles painted me as fragile, confused. Marcus gave quotes about my supposed memory lapses. Kendra wept to reporters about how worried they'd been. An obituary had already been published. Margaret Whitaker, beloved mother and grandmother, gone too soon. Donations in her name to the Dementia Foundation. My jaw locked as I slammed the laptop shut. They had buried me alive. A funeral was already scheduled for the weekend. Jeremiah brought binoculars, and together we watched from the shadows of a maintenance shed at the cemetery. There stood Marcus and Kendra, front and center in black, welcoming mourners with false grief. They spared no expense. An ornate casket, towering flower displays, a program with my smiling face printed on the front. People wept, genuine tears. My book club sisters, the women from church, even Dr. Evans, the surgeon who once saved my life, they all believed the story. But I paid attention to the ones who stayed away. My accountant, my attorney, my financial advisor. The very people who never missed a moment when business was involved, were nowhere in sight. They weren't absent by accident. They were hiding, or they were part of it. After the spectacle of my burial, Marcus and Kendra moved through the mourners like seasoned politicians, shaking hands, accepting sympathy. But the moment anyone pressed them about the details of my so-called final days, they quickly shut the conversation down. By the time Jeremiah drove me back to Miss Thelma's, one truth was clear. Their story was too perfect, too polished. That meant someone close to me had been feeding them the pieces. That night, I sat at the table and made a list. Every person who'd had access to my finances since Charles passed. My advisor, the banker, the lawyer who handled the trust. Someone in that circle had betrayed me. But before I followed that trail, I needed proof of what Marcus and Kendra were really doing inside the house I once called home. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't empty. Just after midnight, Jeremiah let me out 3 blocks from the house in Savannah's historic district. Charles and I had lived there 35 years, raised Marcus, hosted Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving, and built a lifetime. Handing it over to my son was the gravest mistake of my life. The street was silent, thick with southern heat. My key still fit. Marcus had never bothered to reclaim it. I slipped into the backyard and eased the door open like an intruder breaking into her own home. It didn't feel abandoned at all. Some furniture was draped in sheets, but new, expensive pieces had been moved in. A leather sectional, a glass entertainment center, imported rugs. The refrigerator hummed, stocked with fresh food. Someone was living there. It was in Charles's old study that the truth hit me. The desk was buried under papers, legal files, medical records, bank statements. And on top, A binder with bold words across the cover. The Margaret Plan. My name, reduced to a scheme. Hands shaking, I turned the pages. They'd been setting me up for over a year. Coaching me to act forgetful during doctor visits. Placing me in situations to appear confused at social gatherings. That photo the newspaper printed from my birthday party? Not an accident. They hadn't warned me it was a surprise, then captured my bewildered face. Even the medication mistake that landed me in the ER 3 months earlier. Switched bottles. Every slip, every stumble, carefully staged as evidence of dementia. And then the page that froze my blood. A note signed only with initials. MT. The timeline must speed up. Margaret is asking too many questions about the power of attorney. Move to phase 3 within 2 weeks. Phase 3. Termination. I was snapping photos with the disposable camera Jeremiah had given me when headlights cut across the curtains. A car door slammed. Voices followed. Marcus and Kendra. My chest hammered as I backed toward the rear exit. Until their words rooted me in place. You think Mrs. Peterson bought it? Kendra asked, unlocking the door. She cried too hard to question anything, Marcus replied. Mom fell off a boat. End of story. Probate opens Monday. MT says full access in 6 weeks. I was slipping into the garden when a sound stopped me cold. A baby crying. I crouched low among the rose bushes I'd planted decades earlier, listening to the thin wail echo from inside. Marcus and Kendra had never mentioned wanting children. They always claimed the timing wasn't right. But inside my house, an infant cried. My hands trembled harder than ever. This wasn't just about money anymore. There was a baby, helpless, voiceless, caught in their plot. When Jeremiah collected me 15 minutes later, I was pale and shaking. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said. Worse, I whispered. I saw my replacement. I told him about the baby. About the binder. About the mysterious initials. Jeremiah's jaw tightened. They didn't just betray you. They dragged a child into this. I nodded, clutching the disposable camera like it was the only thing keeping me alive. And I need to know whose baby that is. The next morning, we had the film developed at a 1-hour shop Jeremiah trusted. The images laid everything bare. Timelines of my supposed decline, forged medical notes, hidden transfers of money. And tucked between the stack, almost overlooked, a birth certificate. Baby Whitaker. Born 3 weeks ago. Mother Kendra. Father Marcus. But I had seen Kendra days earlier on that yacht. She hadn't looked like a woman who'd just given birth. This is fake, I muttered, nausea rising. Completely fabricated. So whose baby is it? Jeremiah asked, frowning. That night, I lay awake in Miss Thelma's guest room, piecing the puzzle together. My son and his wife had forged documents, staged my decline, plotted my death. And now they had a child whose very existence didn't add up. Whoever that baby was, I knew this much. He was part of the scheme. And if I didn't move quickly, he might not survive it. Over coffee the next morning, Miss Thelma studied my hollow eyes. Baby, you can't carry this by yourself. As if on cue, Jeremiah leaned forward. I know someone. Used to be a cop, now private. Daniel Crawford. Discreet, reliable, and he owes Thelma a favor. By noon, I was in Daniel's cramped office above a sandwich shop in downtown Savannah, recounting everything. He was about 50, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. So, you want me to shadow your son and his wife, uncover the truth about the baby, and identify this MT pulling the strings? He asked when I finished. That's exactly what I want. And you're paying me how? According to the news, your assets are frozen. I slid an envelope across his desk. Cash. Charles always told me to keep an emergency stash in a deposit box Marcus never knew about. Daniel thumbed through the bills, gave a curt nod and got to work. Within 2 days, he had more answers than I'd gathered in months. Your son's been busy since your death, Daniel said, spreading surveillance photos across Thelma's kitchen table. Meetings with attorneys. 2 bank visits. But here's the real twist. He tapped a photo of Marcus and Kendra walking into a sleek glass building. Whitaker Reproductive Services. Exclusive surrogacy clinic. Only for clients with serious money. My stomach lurched. They bought a baby. Not just bought. Daniel said grimly. Arranged months ago. Paid cash. Birth certificate pre-prepared to look authentic. That's why Kendra could parade him as hers. Miss Thelma dropped her knitting, fury darkening her face. Lord have mercy. They plotted your death, then purchased a child to inherit your wealth. And they didn't pull it off alone, Daniel added, sliding another photo across the table. Marcus was shaking hands with a well-groomed woman outside a sleek downtown office. Her face tugged at my memory, but I couldn't place her right away. Miranda Taylor, Marcus introduced. Partner at Taylor & Hughes. She calls herself an estate planner, focusing on family transitions. What she really did was design airtight legal traps that allowed greedy relatives to snatch assets from the elderly under claims of mental decline. Recognition clicked. I had met her 6 months earlier at a charity gala Marcus insisted I attend. She'd taken an unusual interest in my estate planning back then. Daniel's head dipped. That's your MT. She's the one pulling the strings. She's been fabricating medical claims, drafting power of attorney papers, and setting up legal smokescreens. I've traced her across half a dozen families. And believe me, it doesn't stop at bankruptcy. People end up dead. The room tilted beneath me. How many? I asked, my voice tight. Daniel's jaw clenched. No proof yet, but I suspect at least a dozen deaths tied to her services in just 5 years. Miss Thelma hissed between her teeth. That isn't planning, that's execution. Suddenly, I saw the full scope. It wasn't just Marcus and Kendra trying to bleed me dry. This was an entire machine aimed at people like me. And at the baby. Daniel leaned closer. I found the last piece. The child's birth mother was a 17-year-old runaway named Sierra Collins. Miranda located her at a shelter, promising $50,000 if she carried a baby for a couple desperate to start a family. Sierra died during delivery, healthy, no known risks. Witnesses say Miranda herself gave a routine injection. Minutes later, Sierra went into cardiac arrest. They killed her, I whispered. Daniel's silence was answer enough. The kitchen grew still as I stared at photographs of my son clasping hands with a woman who profited from death. The infant asleep in my old house wasn't theirs. He belonged to Sierra. A boy born into betrayal, blood, and greed. Heat spread through my chest. They thought I was gone. They believed their secret buried with me. But I was here. And I was going to haunt them. Not yet, I said steadily. We don't confront them. We let shadows, whispers, and notes remind them I'm still alive. Keep them unsettled. Make them slip. Daniel leaned back, a slow grin breaking. Psychological warfare. I like it. So the plan began. While Marcus and Kendra polished their image in high-rise offices, trying to erase me from existence on paper, I would become their ghost. The first strike was simple, a handwritten note, slipped to their lawyer's office while they met with Miranda Taylor. Dear Marcus and Kendra, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. We need to talk. Love, Mama. P.S. Give my regards to little Robert Sierra. He's beautiful. At exactly 11:47 a.m., Daniel's watch confirmed the delivery. Minutes later, Marcus and Kendra rushed from the building, pale-faced, Miranda trailing after them. Panic was etched across their features. The haunting had begun. That afternoon, I settled into my favorite armchair, the one Charles gave me for our 20th anniversary, and waited. The clock on the mantel ticked softly in the silence. When the front door creaked open, Marcus and Kendra froze at the threshold. Their expressions alone were worth every frigid second I'd survived in the ocean. Well, I said pleasantly, folding my hands. How was your meeting? I trust you didn't sign anything important in my absence. Kendra's scream was sharp as shattered glass. Marcus only gawked, keys trembling in his hand like a boy who'd seen a ghost. Surprised? I asked quietly. I must admit, reading my own obituary was amusing. Dementia donations? A clever touch. Just then Carol, the nurse they'd hired, appeared with the baby in her arms. She had already chosen her allegiance. This woman is not dead, Carol said firmly, placing the child into my arms. Kendra's mask shattered. He's our son, she snapped. I rocked the child gently, meeting her stare. Whose son? Because 4 days ago, Kendra, you didn't look like someone who'd given birth 3 weeks earlier. Their silence was more damning than words. His mother's name was Sierra Collins, I continued. 17 years old. No one to defend her. She carried this child under promises of a brighter future. And she died the day he was born. Died after Miranda Taylor injected her with something she called routine. Kendra went pale. Marcus stared at the floor. And you, my own son, chose to tether yourself to a killer for $50 million. They began to deny, but I cut them off. Daniel's evidence, photos, medical charts, financial records, was already spread across the coffee table, the entire exchange captured by hidden recorders. You get one chance, I said coldly. Speak the truth, or everything goes straight to the FBI. Instead, Marcus and Kendra made their final mistake. They called Miranda. Exactly what I had hoped. When Miranda swept in, dressed sharp as a banker and smiling like a predator, the house was wired with cameras and mics Carol and Daniel had planted. Mrs. Whitaker, she began smoothly, portfolio in hand, we need resolution. Families deserve closure. Your continued presence is inconvenient. Her undoing. Because moments later, while she boasted of orchestrating 37 transitions in 5 years, federal agents stormed the house. Miranda Taylor. Agent Johnson barked, badge raised. You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, elder abuse, and murder. Chaos erupted. Miranda was slammed to the floor, cuffed, while others seized Marcus and Kendra. Carol shielded the baby. I rocked Sierra's son gently in my arms, unmoving, as the storm broke around us. The battles dragged for months. Marcus struck a plea deal, 25 years. Kendra 20. Miranda wasn't as lucky. Convicted on every count, sentenced to life without parole. Her web unraveled. Judges, doctors, accountants, 17 co-conspirators in total. The scheme collapsed. The courts granted me guardianship of the child. His distant kin in Alabama agreed it was best. I named him Robert Sierra Whitaker, for his grandfather, and for the girl who lost her life to bring him here. 5 years later, at 72, I sit on the porch of Miss Thelma's bed and breakfast. Robert Sierra playing at my feet. He knows who his birth mother was. He knows the truth about those who tried to steal his life. And he knows family isn't measured by blood, but by love, sacrifice, and protection. Jeremiah still runs his fishing charters. Daniel still sends Christmas cards with photos of elders he's helped rescue. Miss Thelma has turned her into a haven for seniors who fear their family's greed. Marcus writes letters from prison begging forgiveness. I never reply. Some betrayals cut too deep. Because if I learned anything during my week as a dead woman, it's this. Family can cradle you. Or it can try to drown you. In the end, you decide which legacy endures. And I chose survival. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story touched you as it did me, share where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far it travels. Now I'll leave you with this. If your own child betrayed you for money, would you forgive them? Or make sure justice found them, no matter the cost? Until next time with another tale of truth, betrayal, and survival. Take care. And never forget. Sometimes family is chosen, not given.